Welcome to Make Something. I'm David Picciuto. Today I'm going to show you how to make these stainless steel and copper wedding rings. And this video is brought to us by Squarespace. Check. So every year, my wife and I, we retire our wedding rings and I make new ones. And it is that time of year again. I'm actually 3 weeks late, but it's time to make new ones. And I just got this mini lathe. This will basically be my first mini lathe project. I did do some playing around and some tinkering. I am not a machinist or an expert. If you want to learn more about getting started with this, go check out this playlist by Blondie Hacks. It is absolutely fantastic and talks about everything you would ever want to know about getting started with a mini lathe. It is so good. Go check that out. Now you're probably wondering, why did I pick this particular machine? That is all due to this video right here. This guy did a bunch of research and came to the conclusion this is the best of the Chinese import machines. So I watched that video, I trusted him, he had some good points. Here I am. And then this year, for the very first time, I'm going to make the rings out of this stainless steel tubing that I got from McMaster Carr. This is almost the right size. So I just have to bore it out a little bit and then work on the outside size. If you're wondering why I'm not using titanium for this, I would guess that most machinists would say, please don't use titanium for your very first lathe project. They would probably also not suggest using stainless steel for your very first lathe project, but here I am. I like to dive in head first and just go right at it. So I've done some tests. I've played around with this. It's going to work just fine. That's enough talking. It's time to start cutting. I'm not going to give you every little detail of what I'm doing. I would just kind of give you an overview, and hopefully this inspires you to maybe dive into something like this, or just to give you some ideas. The very first thing I have to do is chop this down into a smaller piece and then chuck this up into the chuck. It's actually too big to go into the side here, so I have to cut it down. The smaller the piece, the more rigidity that I am going to have in here. So I want to cut this down as basically as small as I can get it, while there's still enough room to keep my hot dogs away from the chuck. So we get that cut on the bandsaw. I only have these insert bits. I don't have any of the high-speed tooling. I'm just using what I have. I'm not sure which one is actually better for this operation. I am taking all the necessary safety precautions, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I know what I'm doing. So we are going to face this off and clean up the cut that we made on the bandsaw. So now I have this boring bar installed and I've got this zeroed out at 0, and I'm going to bore this out until it gets to my wife's ring size. I'm going to do mine separate since I have a slightly different size finger, and I will start from the inside and then come out, and I know that I only have to go in 7 millimeters deep. I am starting from the inside and then boring out. That way the chips have a place to go. Although this is a tube and the chips could go the other way. So I really think I could go either way. And I'm hoping that you guys give me some great advice down in the comments. That way we can learn together. This is not the right tool to measure the inside there, but it is what I have, and we are at the size that I need. So now we can start working on the outside. We're using some of this Dicom layout fluid, and we're going to mark, that's probably too much, woo! Then I'm going to mark where I want to create a groove that we're going to fill in with epoxy in a later step. I'm just going to go from 0 to 2.2 millimeters and then just keep going back and forth until I get the groove that I want. We have the cutoff blade in here and we're going to cut the ring off. This will be the last operation on this lathe for this ring. This is probably the most taxing operation on this machine. Luckily, we only have to go so deep. I have been told that that parting operation can be dangerous if that cutoff blade breaks apart, so I had a face shield on. So that came out pretty good. So now I need to make a second one for my size, and then we'll start working on the inlay. For the inlay, I took a copper pipe and I ran a file on it and collected all the shavings and then mixed it with this UV epoxy. And this cures with a UV light. So the reason I have it spinning here on the lathe is just to keep it from dripping and building up on one side. And then once I plug in this UV light and expose it, it'll cure in a few minutes. And then the next steps is to file off the edges and do some final shaping and polishing. But before I do that, I would like to tell you about today's sponsor, and that is Squarespace. If you are a maker like me and you make small crafts like this, maybe you want to sell that. Maybe you need a website as a portfolio to get new clients. Squarespace is the perfect place to do that. I have been using Squarespace for years, way before they were a sponsor. And I used to be a professional web developer before making silly YouTube videos. If I know how to make a website from scratch, why would I ever want to use Squarespace? That's because their templates are absolutely beautiful. The platform is super easy to use. You can sell both digital and physical items. And if you have a bunch of social media sites like I do, you can bring all of those feeds into your website and you have one central place to show off all of your work. There are so many options you have when it comes to your Squarespace store. You can sell both digital and physical items. And I used to have my t-shirts printed here locally and then I would ship them myself. As the business grew, I wanted to move that over to a fulfillment center called Printful, and Printful seamlessly integrates into my Squarespace site. They work together. In addition to that fulfillment center, there are things that I actually do ship from my house, like the books, because I sign them and then ship them off myself. And then I have digital items as well, like PDF plans. So I have 3 different sources for my store that just work together. It just works. That's what I'm trying to say. It just works. It's super easy to use. Go to squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, visit squarespace.com/makesomething for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now, let's get back to these rings and finish them up. So the next thing I'm doing is taking this deburring tool and removing the burr around the inside edge. This works really well. And then I'm gonna chuck this up on the lathe with this wooden dowel. And then I use some blue painter's tape to find the right size, and they just kind of friction fit on there. So then I can take a file and round over the edges and get that epoxy smooth. And then from there, I'm sanding from 220 all the way up to 3000 grit. And I'm using wet sandpaper, and I tried wet sanding and dry sanding, and the wet sanding just seemed to make it messy, and the dry was just as fine. And this may or may not be necessary, but I put a coat of super glue along the outside and then buff that to a polish. My thought is that the exposed copper from sanding it away would actually turn dark and ugly, and I didn't want that to happen, so putting a coat of super glue over that might just work as a nice finish. If you're not familiar with this technique, a lot of wood turners use this on pens, and you can get a super shiny glossy finish very fast. I am really happy with the way this came out. You're actually seeing this before my wife is, because she's away on a work trip. I'm 4 weeks late on getting these done, so I gotta work on my husband skills a little bit. I do have a video of every year that I've done this. I think there are 6 or 7 or 8 of these videos. I've got a playlist. A lot of them are made out of wood. Some of them are copper. I use a ring stretcher in some of them. Every year I try a different technique. This is a fun thing that we do. We retire the old rings and just make new ones. I get asked this every single year. What do you do with the old rings? And they're just kind of scattered throughout the house in various drawers. But one day, I want to make a stand that will hold them all. The problem is it needs to be built and constructed in a way that I could add to it over time. I mean, who knows how long it's going to take before Kelly wants to divorce me. So you might want to check out that playlist of those videos. This machine, this is the Little Machine Shop lathe. No affiliation, paid full price, hashtag not sponsored, all that bull crap. Pretty much ready out of the box. All I really had to do is just screw on the handles, wipe away the shipping grease, and then re-oil everything, and it was good to go. And I feel like this is one of those tools that really opens up a world of possibilities for me. So if I ever get a mill, this will pair nicely with that and really expand my machining and metalworking stuff. Before we go, I've been getting a lot of comments lately saying welcome back, or where have you been, or we miss you. I'm not sure what's happening. I don't think YouTube is showing my videos to all of my subscribers, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you know when I put out a video. I also have an email list you can sign up for. I also post on Twitter and Instagram. We can get around this weird YouTube thing where it's not showing everybody my videos by going to these other places, either email or social media. It's getting to be around Christmas time, and if you want to make gifts for your loved ones, I have 3 woodworking books that I have written and released. One is nothing but cutting boards. There's like 15 cutting board projects in there. I have another one on bandsaw boxes. I think there are 8 bandsaw box projects in there, and then nothing but kitchen utensils and kitchen things for the kitchen. So you might want to check that out. I also have individual plans for various projects, so go check that out. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you sticking around. As always, be safe, have fun, stay passionate, and make something.